Alexis Christoforous, that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Back to Joe Matthew now in Balance of Power.
All right, Alexis, good to see you. Thank you for being part of our conversation today, and thank you for joining us on the Monday edition of Balance of Power. Yes, I'm Joe Matthew, and we are talking on the 20th day of the government shutdown. Remember how many people said this would not happen? We wouldn't set a record this time, and well, we already have. This is quite the superlative for you. You'll sound smart at the cocktail party later. Yes, this is the third longest government shutdown in U.S. history, but it is already the longest full government shutdown ever. Hey, feel good about it. We got something done, just not anything productive. Yeah, the first and longest full government shutdown, 2018 to 2019 was partial. That was the big one, the 35-day shutdown. 95, 96, remember that? Also partial, lasted 21 days. Now the third longest government shutdown in history if you include those. But hey, we're going for the brass ring here. And there are a couple of Democratic senators who are expected to vote for legislation to pay federal workers, to pay the troops. A show vote is what it's being called at the White House, and we'll have more on that as we make our way through it. Remember, we were gaming odds for months on this shutdown with Nathan Dean, and I understand he does not run odds on when we're going to reopen. But he does bring his wisdom to us every Monday here, not only on this program, but if you subscribe to our podcast, you get Nathan's Monday morning briefing that helps to set the table for the week, and he's with us now. Senior U.S. policy analyst. Great to see you. Were you playing football over the weekend?
Actually, I had the week off.
You did? Good
I had
job.
the week off, so
See?
I just watched the Commanders and the Bears.
America's dad at home, like most other dads, watching football instead of coaching it. This is remarkable here, that we're sitting here talking about this still without any idea of when it's going to end. Laura Davison was just with us, pointing to November 1st. Open enrollment, expiration of SNAP benefits. But why should we think that would matter?
So I think there are two things from the Democratic side if you're looking for an off-ramp for this shutdown. And the first one is just what you alluded to.
Yeah.
You know, November 1st, SNAP benefits, 42 million Americans take advantage of that program. ACA enrollment, you know, the higher numbers for these premiums will come in. Potentially Democrats could say, okay, this is the Republicans' problem now. But then you get the argument of rescissions and this idea that if it takes 60 votes to appropriate a bill, but only a 50-vote majority to unwind some of this, from the Democratic perspective, why should you ever do a deal on appropriations if the Republicans and President Trump could just claw it back and pound that?
Yep.
There's going to have to be some decisions on the Democratic side going on with Senator Chuck Schumer to try and figure out for a messaging for next year of how they can view this as a winning strategy. Because right now the polling still suggests that Republicans slightly have the edge in terms of getting blame here. So from the Democratic perspective, I think Senator Schumer's saying, look, we're still good. But also on the Republican side, they're looking at the same polling data, and they're saying that their base is 100% behind them on their strategy. So they're also saying they're good. So I don't think you're going to see a reopening this week, despite what Kevin Hassett said this morning.
Fascinating. We've got the furloughs in place. They're going to keep coming. Apparently now the guys who run the nuclear stockpile are on the list. And by the way, if you were with us last week on Bloomberg Surveillance, Secretary Chris Wright told you this was coming. 1,400 employees at the National Nuclear Security Administration receiving furlough notices today. Fewer than 400 will remain in place to work on safeguarding the stockpile. Remember turn your key, sir, back in the 80s? They may be the only guys left in the silo. So it's not just healthcare, but this is the issue that Democrats are going to seize on. And I'm going to just take your temperature on this new ad campaign. The group Keep Americans Covered up with a 7-figure ad campaign today, and they're going to run this in states from D.C. Right on through the alphabet to try to make the point that open enrollment is coming and premiums are rising. Here's a taste of the ad.
We need Congress to do its job.
I need Congress to give people like me a fighting chance.
We need these tax credits passed today.
If Congress fails, families pay.
All right, so this goes on. It's a 30-second ad or something. Does this type of politics make a difference? Because it seems to me the longer time goes on, the more Republicans will be called to address the health care issue.
Well, shutdowns are always about pressure points and pain on the American individual. And this is a little bit different of a shutdown because President Trump has taken steps to try and avoid that pain.
Yeah.
You know, talking about reallocating money for military members.
Yeah.
You know, it's one of those things where we had IMF meetings last week with a lot of policymakers and a lot of clients. And we didn't get a single question about this government shutdown.
Really?
Not a single
Amazing.
one. And so this is one of those shutdowns where the president's trying to take a lot of steps here to avoid pain, and pain is usually what brings both sides back to the table. So we talk about pain in terms of November 1st, but we also have to talk about pain in terms of air traffic controllers, TSA personnel, items like this ad just went to. That's the point in which these parties are going to feel the need to come back together. And I continue to go back to this idea that when a solution is found, not if, but when a solution is found, it's going to come from a group of senators, probably working outside of leadership, who just goes to both parties and say, here's what we've come up with, take it or leave it. And I think both parties run with it.
Are you struck by how little the talking points have changed? I mean, this has been a true standoff, frozen in place since this began, or even before. I mean, Republicans still say, yeah, we'll talk to you, but you got to open the government first.
Well, think about the phases of a shutdown. Phase one, going back to the 2018-19, there was a little bit of a holiday break there, but for the first 7 days, it was the talking points. After the 7 days, then people said, okay, the pain is beginning to be felt on Americans. Remember those World War II vets who stormed the gates over at the memorial?
Yeah.
That's when the pain started going back from Americans onto Congress, and that's when the talking points changed. We're not feeling that right now. I mean, apologies to the folks listening right now who are furloughed right now, but for the most of Americans, they're not being impacted by the government shutdown yet. So I think what happens is that we'll see how these negotiations take place next week as we get closer to the November 1st deadline. Maybe President Trump doesn't have more money for the troops for another round of paychecks. We don't know. Yeah. But then we'll see what happens if we can get into phase two of the talking points.
Everyone I talk to, and this is inside and outside of Washington, says the same thing. Joe, Thanksgiving's coming. And when the airports melt down, there's no way they're going to keep staring at each other like this. Don't you tend to agree that it's the airports that bring this to an end in the holiday travel season?
I think it's the airports, and I think it's the holiday travel season for those independent, those bipartisan, moderate senators. Yeah. I think if you talk to the folks on both sides, the first step will be, look, the airports are melting down. Talk to the Republicans or talk to the Democrats because they still have to see that polling data change just a little bit for them to feel like we have to get off our positions.
You talked to Chris Sununu about this. He was on a couple of weeks ago. I mean, these guys in the air traffic control towers were already stressed out working 60-hour weeks, being asked to leave their families and work under unreasonable conditions, and now doing without pay is, for many, we'll see how long this lasts. Nathan Dean's with us, so I have to ask crypto very quickly. Everybody remembers the Genius Act. It's time for its implementation. How difficult, how complex will that be?
It's complex. It's going to take quarters. The big question is, can essentially these crypto platforms pay rewards to hold stablecoins? Yeah. It was prohibited for issuers to do it, but not for crypto platforms. So we have a bank versus crypto fight that's going on at the Senate at the moment. It's like my two kids fighting. I love you both, but ultimately I think the status quo wins, and that's why I think the crypto ultimately wins this fight.
It's going to take quarters, you said, as opposed to months or weeks?
Yeah, you're looking at 2027, 2028.
Is that right? Did people know that going in?
I think there's a lot of sentiment that this is going to happen.
Are investors going to say, oh, no, you never told us this is going to
take because so long? I don't think there's going to be a lot of enforcement risk in the interim. Okay. So people know that clarity is coming, but this is the government. It takes a long time to write these rules, but they're also closed right now.
You said clarity. You didn't. That was a small C clarity. Is there a big C clarity coming?
There's a discussion on Wednesday. The Senate Democrats are going to be meeting with the crypto executives. I'm still bullish that this Clarity Act can pass in the first half next year.
How often is your phone ringing on crypto these days?
It's off and on.
Versus everything else we talk about, banking regs and everything else.
The stablecoin pieces in particular, because there's a lot of questions on this yield.
There was a time I couldn't walk by your desk without you being on the phone with the crypto bros, but I guess, everyone has their season, right? Nathan Dean, his season has come to an end, at least on the sidelines. I'm glad you can actually watch football for the rest of this. Bloomberg Intelligence Senior U.S. Policy Analyst. Look for his podcast. If you subscribe to ours, you subscribe to his. So get on it. Apple, Spotify, and wherever else you get your podcasts. We'll assemble our panel next. Happy day